I succeeded on my own, but my brother thinks I'm his responsibility and is determined to claim my wealth as family support. And if you told me 10 years ago that I'd be where I am today, I'd have laughed in your face. Back then, I was barely scraping by, crashing on a friend's couch while working 3 part-time jobs to keep the lights on. Success wasn't just out of reach. It felt like some mythical thing only meant for other people. But somehow, through sheer willpower, and let's be honest, a little luck, I made it. Now, at 35, I run my own company, live in a house that doesn't leak when it rains, and finally have the financial security I used to dream about. But here's the thing no one tells you about success. It changes people, especially the ones closest to you. My brother Tyler, for example. Tyler's 3 years older than me and has always had this air of authority, like being born first made him the family's designated leader. Growing up, he was the golden child, charming, athletic, everyone's favorite. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid in the corner, trying not to draw too much attention. We weren't exactly close, but we weren't enemies either. At least, not back then. Things changed after Dad passed away. Tyler, who'd always had a knack for taking control, stepped into the role of man of the house without missing a beat. Mom leaned on him a lot, and I think he liked being the one in charge. But when I decided to strike out on my own, to chase something better than what we had, he didn't take it well. He thought I was being selfish, abandoning the family. And when I finally started making money, he started dropping hints, little comments about how family supports family and how we're all in this together. At first, I brushed it off as harmless talk. But it's not harmless anymore. Not after last night. It started with a phone call. Tyler invited me to dinner at his place. His tone was casual, even friendly, but I knew better. Tyler never does casual. Still, I went. I figured if this was another one of his lectures about responsibility, I'd endure it, make an excuse to leave early, and forget about it. Simple. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was Ashley, his wife. Ashley's the kind of person who can make you feel small without saying a word. She greeted me with a tight smile and a glass of wine, and it was clear from the start that this wasn't just a family dinner. This was an ambush. The conversation started innocently enough. Tyler asked about my business, how things were going. He always does that, framing his questions like he cares when he's really just looking for an angle. I kept my answers vague, not wanting to give him more ammunition than necessary. But then, as the main course was served, he dropped the bomb. "Jake, we need to talk about Mom." That got my attention. "What about her?" I asked, already on edge. "She's struggling," Tyler said, his voice heavy with manufactured concern. "The house needs repairs, and her medical bills. They're piling up." I frowned. "I just paid for the roof last year, and I cover her insurance. What else does she need?" Tyler exchanged a glance with Ashley, who finally spoke up. "It's not just about the bills, Jake. It's about support. Mom's lonely, and honestly, she shouldn't have to worry about money at her age." "She doesn't," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I make sure of that." Ashley gave me a pitying look, the kind you'd give a child who just doesn't get it. "It's not just about her, Jake. It's about all of us. Families stick together, and right now, we're stretched thin." There it was. The pitch. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "So, what exactly are you asking for?" Tyler sighed, as if the weight of the world were on his shoulders. "Look, Jake, you've done well for yourself. Really well. And that's great. But Ashley and we've been carrying a lot of the burden for years, helping Mom, taking care of everything. It's not fair for you to sit back while we struggle." "I'm not sitting back," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I've been supporting Mom financially for years. What more do you want from me?" Ashley jumped in, her tone sugary sweet. "Jake, no one's saying you're not helping. But think about the bigger picture. You're in a position to make a real difference for this family." I stared at her, trying to keep my temper in check. "Are you suggesting I hand over my money to you?" Tyler held up his hands, a mock gesture of innocence. "No one's saying that. But maybe we could work out something more collaborative. A way to pool resources. You know, for the good of everyone." I almost laughed. Collaborative? Pool resources? This wasn't a proposal. It was a shakedown. The rest of the evening was a blur of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled guilt trips. By the time I left, I was fuming. Tyler didn't just want help, he wanted control. He saw my success as a resource he could claim, like it was some kind of family inheritance. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and tried to calm down, but the words kept playing over and over in my head. For the good of everyone. It wasn't about Mom. It was never about her. Tyler wanted my money because he thought he deserved it. Because in his mind, I owed him for something I never asked for. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. I woke up the next morning still replaying the dinner in my head. Tyler's words weren't just manipulative, they were deliberate. He knew exactly how to push my buttons, wrapping his demands in family loyalty and guilt. The problem was, I couldn't figure out what his endgame was. Did he really think I'd just hand over my money without a fight? Before I could spiral too far into overthinking, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia, my best friend since college, and one of the few people I could trust to give it to me straight. She'd been there during the lowest points of my life, the late nights when I wanted to quit and the mornings when I didn't think I'd make it. If anyone could help me sort this out, it was her. "You sound tense," she said as soon as I picked up. "Understatement of the year," I replied. I gave her a quick rundown of the dinner, Tyler's collaborative pitch, and Ashley's role in the whole charade. "Wow," Olivia said when I finished. "That's brazen. Even for Tyler." "You're telling me," I muttered. "I don't know what their deal is, but I'm not about to let them guilt me into handing over my business." "Good," she said firmly. "Because this isn't about helping Mom, it's about control. Tyler's always been like this, Jake. He sees you succeeding on your own, and it makes him feel like he's failing. So what does he do? He tries to take credit for your success." Her words hit harder than I expected. Deep down, I knew she was right. Tyler couldn't stand the idea that I'd outgrown him, that I'd built something without his help, but knowing that didn't make it easier to deal with. A few days later, Tyler called again. This time, he cut straight to the point. "Jake, we've been thinking," he said, his tone annoyingly casual. "Maybe it's time we had a family meeting." "A family meeting?" I repeated, already bracing myself. "Yeah, you, me, Ashley, and Mom. We need to get on the same page about how to handle things going forward." "Handle what, exactly?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Tyler sighed like I was being deliberately obtuse. "Mom's future, the house, expenses, all of it. Look, you've been doing great, and Ashley and I are doing what we can, but it's not sustainable. If we work together, we can make sure Mom's taken care of and—" "Tyler," I cut him off, my patience wearing thin. "Mom's already taken care of. I've been taking care of her for years. What more do you want from me?" He hesitated, just for a second, before saying, "It's not about what I want. It's about what Mom needs, and what the family needs." There it was again. The family, as if his needs and Ashley's schemes somehow equated to family duty. I bit back a sharp response and told him I'd think about the meeting, though I had no intention of agreeing to it. That night, I went over to Emma's place. We'd been dating for about 6 months, and while things were still relatively new, I trusted her. She had this way of cutting through the noise and seeing things clearly, a skill I desperately needed right now. "Let me get this straight," Emma said after I explained everything. "Your brother wants you to bankroll him and his wife under the guise of supporting the family." "Pretty much," I said, slumping back on her couch. "He's acting like I'm some kind of golden goose." Emma frowned, her sharp blue eyes narrowing. "That's not just manipulative, it's dangerous. People like that don't stop, Jake. If you give in even a little, they'll keep taking until there's nothing left." "I'm not planning to give in," I said quickly, but Tyler's persistent. "He won't just let this go." Emma leaned forward, her expression serious. "Then you need to figure out what he's really after. Is it money? Control? Both? Because whatever it is, he's already laying the groundwork to get it." Her words stuck with me long after I left her apartment. She was right. This wasn't just about Tyler being entitled. He had a plan, and if I didn't figure it out soon, I'd be playing catch-up. A week later, I got my answer. It came in the form of a phone call from Mom. She sounded nervous, like she was gearing up for an uncomfortable conversation. "Jake, honey, I need to ask you something." She began hesitantly. Have you talked to Tyler recently? About the trust? I froze. What trust? She sighed, and I could practically hear her wringing her hands. The family trust. Your father set it up years ago, before he passed. It wasn't much, but it was supposed to be for emergencies. Tyler's been saying that maybe we should use it now, to help out. I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to keep my frustration in check. Mom, I've never heard of a family trust. Why is Tyler bringing it up now? Well, she said, her voice dropping. He says you've been doing so well that maybe we could, combine resources. For the family. There it was again. For the family. Mom, I said carefully, I need you to be honest with me. Is Tyler pressuring you about this? She hesitated, and in that moment, I knew the answer. He means well, Jake, she said finally. He just wants to make sure we're all taken care of. I clenched my jaw, anger bubbling under the surface. Tyler wasn't just pushing me. He was manipulating Mom too. And now, he was dragging Dad's legacy into his scheme. That night, I called Olivia. I needed to vent, and I needed advice. Jake, she said after I explained everything, you need to get ahead of this. If there's a trust involved, Tyler's probably already scheming to get his hands on it. You need to find out exactly what's in it and how it's managed. How do I do that? I asked. Talk to a lawyer, she said without hesitation. Someone who knows how to deal with family disputes. And whatever you do, don't agree to anything Tyler suggests until you have all the facts. It was solid advice, and I knew she was right. If Tyler wanted a fight, I needed to be ready for it. The next day, I called Sophie, a lawyer I'd worked with during the early days of my business. She was sharp, no nonsense, and exactly the kind of person I needed in my corner. After I explained the situation, she nodded thoughtfully. If there's a trust involved, the first step is finding out how it's structured. Who manages it? What are the terms? Once we know that, we can figure out what Tyler's trying to do, and if he's trying to take control of it. I asked. Her expression hardened. Then we make sure he doesn't. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Tyler might think he had the upper hand, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. Sophie didn't waste any time. Within a few days, she managed to get her hands on the documents related to the family trust. What she found didn't surprise me, but it still made my stomach churn. The trust was set up by your father about 15 years ago, Sophie explained when we met at her office. It's small, probably less than $20,000 now, given the investments and withdrawals over the years. The trustee is your mother, but Tyler seems to be trying to position himself as a co-trustee. Co-trustee? I echoed, my fist clenching. What does that mean for me? It means Tyler would have significant influence over how the funds are used, she said bluntly. He wouldn't have full control, but he could easily pressure your mother into decisions. I let out a frustrated sigh, running a hand through my hair. And let me guess, he's already been pressuring her. Sophie nodded. If I had to guess, he's banking on the fact that you didn't know about the trust. He's trying to frame this as a family solution, but what he's really doing is setting the stage to claim the money for himself. Unbelievable, I muttered. How do we stop him? Sophie gave me a reassuring smile. Leave that to me, but I'll need you to stay one step ahead of Tyler. He's likely already planning his next move. Sophie's warning proved prophetic. A few days later, I got a frantic call from Mom. Jake, I didn't know what else to do, she said, her voice trembling. Tyler came by earlier and he brought a lawyer with him. My stomach dropped. A lawyer? For what? He said it's just to formalize things, she explained. He wants to make the trust more efficient, I think he said. But I didn't sign anything, I swear. Good, I said firmly, though my mind was racing. Don't sign anything without talking to me first, okay? I won't, she promised. But Jake? He seemed so sure about everything. He said it was for my own good. Of course he did. Tyler's charm was his most dangerous weapon. It's how he got people to go along with his plans before they realized what was happening. But this time, I wasn't going to let him win. That night, I met with Olivia and Emma to lay everything out. Emma had been digging into Ashley's background, and what she found only made things worse. Ashley has a history of this kind of behavior, Emma said, sliding her laptop across the table to show me. Before she married Tyler, she was involved in a messy legal battle with her ex. He claimed she manipulated him into giving her control over his assets, then drained his accounts before filing for divorce. Jesus, I muttered, staring at the screen. Does Tyler know about this? Emma shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, she's clearly the brains behind this operation. Olivia leaned forward, her expression grim. So, what's the plan? Because if Tyler's already bringing lawyers into this, you need to hit back hard. I'm working with Sophie, I said. She's looking into ways to block Tyler from gaining control of the trust. But I need to figure out how far he's willing to go. Emma gave me a pointed look. He's already crossed one line by bringing in a lawyer. Don't underestimate him, Jake. He'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants. I nodded, though a part of me still hoped she was wrong. Tyler was manipulative, sure, but I couldn't believe he'd completely betray me. Or Mom. At least, not yet. My hope shattered a week later when Sophie called with an update. Jake, I just got word from Tyler's lawyer, she said, her tone sharp. They're filing a petition to remove your mother as the sole trustee. What? I said, my voice rising. Can they even do that? They can try, Sophie said. They're claiming she's unfit to manage the trust due to her age and health. They want Tyler to take over as sole trustee. I felt a surge of anger like I'd never felt before. He's trying to push Mom out of her own trust? Exactly, Sophie said. It's a bold move, but it's also risky. If we can prove that his motives are self-serving, the court won't side with him. But we need evidence. Evidence of what? I asked. Anything that shows Tyler's real intentions, she said. Emails, texts, conversations. Anything that proves he's not acting in the family's best interest. I thought back to the dinner at Tyler's house, the way he and Ashley had carefully orchestrated their pitch. They hadn't left much of a paper trail, but maybe, just maybe, there was something I could use. Determined to find answers, I started digging. I went through old messages, emails, and even social media posts, looking for anything that might expose Tyler's motives. It was slow, frustrating work, but eventually, I struck gold. Buried in my text history was a message Tyler had sent me months ago, before this whole mess started. It was short and casual, but the implication was clear. Asterisk, if you're doing as well as you say, maybe it's time you gave back. Mom's not the only one who could use a little help, you know. Asterisk. I forwarded the message to Sophie immediately. This is good, she said when we met later that week. It's not definitive proof, but it shows a pattern of behavior. If we can find more like this, we'll have a strong case. Where do we start? I asked. She smiled. Leave that to me. Meanwhile, Tyler wasn't backing down. He started showing up at Mom's house unannounced, playing the concerned son while subtly pressuring her to sign over control of the trust. Each time, Mom held firm, but I could tell it was wearing on her. She hated conflict, and Tyler knew exactly how to exploit that. But he underestimated her resolve, and mine. With Sophie's help, I compiled a dossier of evidence. Text messages, voicemails, even a recording of a conversation I'd had with Mom where she admitted Tyler had been pressuring her. It wasn't much, but it was enough to paint a picture of his true intentions. The final straw came when Emma uncovered financial records showing that Tyler and Ashley were deep in debt. Credit card bills, overdue loans, even a foreclosure notice on a rental property they owned. It was all there, laid out in black and white. They weren't trying to help the family. They were trying to save themselves. When I showed the documents to Sophie, she smiled for the first time in weeks. This, she said, holding up the records, is exactly what we needed. Tyler and Ashley didn't know it yet, but the walls were starting to close in on them. Armed with Sophie's legal expertise and Emma's discoveries, I finally felt like I had the upper hand. But as much as I wanted to believe the evidence would speak for itself, I knew Tyler wouldn't go down without a fight. He'd already shown how far he was willing to go, and I had a sinking feeling he wasn't finished. My gut was right. The escalation began with an email. Tyler's lawyer sent Sophie a formal notice, claiming that my refusal to collaborate was causing emotional and financial harm to the family. The letter accused me of hoarding wealth that could be used for essential family support and implied that my actions were selfish and destructive. When Sophie read it, she laughed out loud. "This is nonsense," she said, shaking her head. "They're grasping at straws." "It feels more like a threat," I said grimly. "What's their next move?" Sophie's smile faded. "If I had to guess, they're setting up for a lawsuit. Something dramatic, like claiming you've mismanaged your support for your mother or breached some kind of family agreement." I stared at her, disbelief mixing with anger. "But there is no family agreement. I've been supporting Mom out of my own pocket, no strings attached." "Exactly," Sophie said, "which is why their case won't hold up in court. But they're not aiming for a legal victory. They're trying to intimidate you. They want you to fold before this ever gets that far." Well, they were in for a rude awakening. If Tyler thought he could scare me into submission, he clearly didn't know me as well as he thought. While Sophie worked on a counter-strategy, I decided to confront Tyler directly. I couldn't keep playing defense while he and Ashley plotted behind the scenes. It was time to make him face the truth. I wasn't going to let him take anything from me. I called him late one evening, catching him off guard. He answered after a few rings, his voice dripping with faux concern. "Jake, hey, I've been meaning to call you." "Cut the crap, Tyler," I said, my tone colder than ice. "I know what you're doing, and it's not going to work." There was a brief pause before he replied, his voice carefully neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "The trust, the lawsuit, the lies you've been feeding Mom. It's over. I've got the evidence to prove what you and Ashley are really after." Tyler's facade cracked, just for a moment. I heard the sharp intake of breath, the subtle shift in his tone. "Jake, this isn't about me. It's about the family. If you just stop being so stubborn, we could resolve this without any drama." "Without drama?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're the one dragging lawyers into this, trying to push Mom out of her own trust, and accusing me of, what was it? Emotional harm. You don't want to resolve anything. You want control." Tyler's silence was deafening. "Here's the deal," I continued, my anger boiling over. "Back off now, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you and Ashley have been up to. You won't just lose the trust. You'll lose whatever shred of respect Mom has left for you. You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" Tyler hissed, his mask finally slipping. "You think just because you made a little money, you can lord it over the rest of us. But guess what, Jake? Family doesn't work like that. You don't get to walk away from your responsibilities. Family doesn't work like this either." I shot back. "And I'm done letting you dictate the rules." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline. The confrontation hadn't solved anything, but it felt good to finally stand up to him. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvers and tense conversations. Sophie filed a motion to block Tyler's attempt to take over the trust, citing his financial instability and history of manipulation. Meanwhile, Emma continued digging into Ashley's past, uncovering even more dirt on her shady dealings. It was all coming together, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. And then it happened. It was a Saturday afternoon when I got the call from Mom. Her voice was trembling, on the verge of tears. "Jake, you need to come over," she said. "Now." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "It's Tyler," she whispered. "He's saying awful things. He's trying to turn me against you." I didn't need to hear more. I was out the door in minutes, racing to her house with my mind spinning. What could Tyler possibly have said to push her to this point? And how far was he willing to go? When I arrived, Tyler's car was already in the driveway. I stormed inside to find him in the living room, pacing angrily while Mom sat on the couch, her face pale and tear-streaked. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Tyler stopped pacing and turned to face me, his expression a twisted mix of anger and triumph. "Nice of you to show up," he sneered. "I was just explaining to Mom how you've been lying to her." "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "He told me you're trying to take the trust for yourself," Mom said quietly, her voice shaking. "That you've been plotting against the family this whole time." I stared at her in disbelief. "You can't seriously believe that?" Tyler stepped closer, his voice rising. Why wouldn't she? You've been hiding things from her for years, Jake. You think you're better than us, that you can just throw money at problems and call it support, but you don't care about this family. Not really. That's rich coming from you. I shot back. You're the one trying to take control of the trust. You're the one who's been lying to Mom, dragging her into your mess. That's enough, Mom said, her voice cutting through the tension. She stood up, her hands trembling. Both of you, stop it. I can't take this anymore. The room fell silent. For the first time, I realized just how much this was hurting her. Tyler and I had been so focused on outmaneuvering each other that we'd forgotten the person we were supposed to be protecting. Later that night, after Tyler left, I sat with Mom and told her everything. The trust, the lawsuit, the evidence Emma and I had found. It all came pouring out. She listened quietly, her expression shifting from shock to anger to sadness. I didn't want to believe it, she said finally, her voice heavy. But I can't ignore what you've shown me. Tyler's not the man I thought he was. It was a bittersweet victory. I'd won her trust, but at what cost? My relationship with Tyler was shattered, and the family I tried so hard to protect felt more broken than ever. In the weeks following my confrontation with Tyler, the tension in the family hit a breaking point. Mom, who'd always been the glue holding us together, was caught between her love for her sons and the harsh reality of what Tyler had become. It broke her heart to admit it, but she finally saw through his facade. That didn't make the fallout any easier. Tyler's next move was as bold as it was desperate. True to Sophie's prediction, he filed a formal lawsuit against me, claiming that I'd misused family funds to enrich myself and neglected my responsibilities to our mother. The audacity of his claims would have been laughable if it weren't for the strain it put on Mom and on me. This isn't about winning in court, Sophie told me during one of our strategy meetings. Tyler's trying to force your hand. He knows his case is weak, but he's betting you'll settle to avoid the drama. He doesn't know me very well then, I replied, though the stress was wearing me down. Fighting Tyler wasn't just a legal battle. It was personal, and every day it dragged on felt like another weight on my shoulders. But as much as I wanted to end this quickly, I refused to give in. Tyler's pattern of manipulation had gone unchecked for too long, and I wasn't about to let him keep playing the victim while he tried to take what wasn't his. Emma and Olivia were my rocks through the chaos. Emma, ever resourceful, kept digging into Tyler and Ashley's financial history, while Olivia made sure I didn't lose my sanity. Jake, you can't let him get in your head, Olivia said one evening after I vented about the latest court filing. Tyler thrives on making people doubt themselves. Don't give him that power. She's right, Emma added, her voice calm but firm. He's counting on you to fold under the pressure. But you're smarter than he is, and you have the truth on your side. It was easier said than done, but their support kept me grounded. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to protect Mom and everything I'd worked so hard to build. The court case turned into a spectacle. Tyler and Ashley painted themselves as martyrs, claiming they'd sacrificed everything to support the family while I reaped the rewards of my so-called privilege. Their lawyer leaned heavily on emotional appeals, trying to portray me as a selfish, ungrateful son who cared more about his business than his family. Sophie, meanwhile, dismantled their arguments with surgical precision. She presented evidence of my financial support for Mom, the text messages Tyler had sent, and, most damning of all, the records Emma had uncovered. The mountain of debt Tyler and Ashley had racked up over the years wasn't just irresponsible, it was proof of their true motives. The plaintiff's claims are not only unfounded, Sophie argued in court, but they are also a blatant attempt to exploit the defendant's success for personal gain. This case isn't about family, it's about greed. Watching Tyler squirm as Sophie laid out the facts was oddly satisfying. For once, he couldn't charm his way out of accountability. But the real turning point came when Mom took the stand. Her testimony was raw and emotional, a stark contrast to Tyler's calculated performance. She spoke about the years I'd spent supporting her, the pressure Tyler had put on her, and the pain of watching her sons tear each other apart. Jake has always been there for me, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. He's done more for this family than anyone else, and he's never asked for anything in return. I can't stand by and let him be punished for that. It was a powerful moment, and it left no doubt about where Mom stood. Tyler's case was crumbling, and he knew it. The final blow came when Sophie presented the evidence of Tyler and Ashley's attempts to manipulate the trust. Emails, text messages, and even a voice recording Emma had found of Ashley boasting about her plan to secure the trust funds. It all painted a damning picture of their deceit. By the time the judge delivered the verdict, it was clear who the real villains were. The case was dismissed, and Tyler's petition to take over the trust was denied. Not only that, but the court ordered him and Ashley to pay my legal fees, a small but satisfying victory. The aftermath of the trial was bittersweet. Tyler and Ashley retreated into silence, their reputations in shambles. Mom, though relieved, was devastated by what had happened. She asked me more than once if there was any way to reconcile, but I couldn't give her the answer she wanted. Maybe someday, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Tyler had crossed too many lines, and the damage he'd done felt irreversible. Emma and Olivia encouraged me to focus on moving forward, and slowly but surely, I started to rebuild. My relationship with Mom grew stronger, built on a newfound honesty and mutual respect. And while I mourned the loss of my brother, I refused to let his betrayal define me. In the end, the experience taught me a painful but valuable lesson. Family isn't about blood, it's about trust. Tyler had seen my success as something he was entitled to, but success isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn, and no one has the right to take it away from you. As I stood in my office one evening, looking out at the city skyline, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. The battle was over, and though the scars would take time to heal, I knew I'd made the right choice. Some people will always see you as their safety net, their golden ticket, their way out of their own mistakes. But that doesn't mean you have to carry their weight. Sometimes, the only way to protect yourself, and the people who truly matter, is to let go. And that's exactly what I did.